By PC, pod or pad, you're listening to Paid to Play, and quite possibly watching it as well. I am Rob Farker, your host for this weekly exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the bits of you that you worry might make you seem silly, geeky, or even odd, into your income-generating life is one of the best things you can do. It might not be easy, but it's easier than we think and even fear. Every odd-numbered episode of this show, I like to do a little bit of a review of how I'm doing in terms of getting paid to play. But funnily enough, this episode, which although it's numbered episode 68, has been recorded after I published, episodes 69 and 71, my guest chats with Shana of Ever After Parties and Tonya Davis of Action Hero Fitness. So if you've not seen those already, please go give them a look. This is actually going to be about how I'm going to be talking a little bit less about what I'm doing in terms of getting paid to play. I think you might have noticed, especially if you've known me for a little while outside this podcast, this cycle I tend to have. I get a new idea and I get hyped on it and I dig into it, and after a few weeks to a few months, especially when things start getting a little bit tough, doubt creeps in. My perfectionist streak really digs in and grabs a hold. Sometimes it feels as though I'm trying to be too much too quickly. I will hit blogs, I will look for advice, trying to work out the best way to do what I want to do before I've even started and figured out either A, what I'm doing wrong, or B, what I don't like about what I'm doing. A lot of places do suggest that you do go as public as early as possible and try and make a sale as early as you can. In some ways, yes, it can be an absolute confidence builder. But I think you do need privacy at times to suck. That really what you need to concentrate on is getting into the basic habits of producing your stuff, as lonely as that might be, before you start sharing what you do. And I know there can be a certain thrill getting involved with other people early in the process. I do kind of envy Beathy of Beathy Photography. I think he had been doing his own thing for a little while first, but I occasionally find myself envying when he joined an online crafting group. Episode 39 was my chat with Beathy, so if you go to paidtoplay.com.au or go to this YouTube channel and do a search for Beathy or episode 39, you will find that episode there. Yes, I was always a little bit envious of the crafting group that he wound up joining and how he met some awesome people, like his good cosplayer friend Jessica Negri. When you're starting out, going out early, it can look a bit courageous. Courage and fear are kind of tough. Sometimes you'll find that it is fear that actually motivates you, that pushes you to get out a little bit too early before you're ready. And I know, again, there is a lot of advice out there that says start before you're ready. But I think sometimes you need to put that into a bit of context. But at least for me anyway, comes down more to starting to do the basic work rather than getting out and publishing. I've kind of had that trouble perhaps with Slam Dance, the novel slash bunch of short stories that I was working on. I got a couple of short stories and a run of that webcomic that I was working on out of it. But the webcomic I'm particularly happy with. I was glad to get that done and out there. But after headbutting Snowflake method a few times too many, the Snowflake method, folks, is an outlining method, a way of coming up with a solid plot for a novel. And I tried trying to use that process to come up with a story idea for Slam Dance and just felt frustrated more than anything else. So it was an episode of me trying to seek out advice a little bit earlier on rather than just exploring writing as I liked to do it and making the time to do it and finding my own rhythm and just getting what was inside my head out. Readiness might be overrated, and starting before you're ready is a great way to get out of your comfort zone. But yes, it is sometimes all right to say, I'm not ready yet. I do need a bit of time to get close to ready. I think someone once said, perfect is the enemy of the good. Sometimes in your own mind, ready becomes synonymous with perfect. Perhaps ready is when it's good. Still, it's good to accept that it is going to be a while before you get to good. I'm going to focus more on just getting stuff done in private. And be writing, will it be voice work, will it be other projects? I think it's best to not even talk about the generalities of what I'm doing unless and until I've got something very specific and I think very narrowed down and helpful to say. And even then, that can kind of take away from what I'm doing, because that little nugget of advice might need a bit of research, it might need a bit of polishing before it's ready to be put out there, and that can take time away from those other basic things that I want to do. As my wife likes to remind me of that common saying a lot, those who can do and those who can't teach, and maybe thing as it is to put advice out there, perhaps the best advice that anyone can follow is just to keep it quiet for a little bit and keep going, and maybe wait until people ask you for advice before you offer it, or wait until you actually hear other people talking about their problems and the frustrations they have. The overall goal is to play a bit more, worry about public exposure less, worry about getting it right the first time less, and yeah, I think that is another reason for keeping it private, just to claim back some of your personal enjoyment, the fun that you get out of doing it, for its own sake, for your own sake, before you try and turn it into something that needs to be polished and worked on to give it the best odds of making somebody else happy as well. And I think that's another good lesson for keeping it private. Sometimes you just need to narrow it down to a few ideas that you're working on, put the rest of them on the back burner just so that they don't get in the way of you getting the main things that you're doing right now done. So if there is a resolution that I have for the new year, it's that. Keep playing privately, unless it's a kind of play like maybe a tabletop role-playing game or a board game or something like that, where, you know, you can't play privately, you've got to do it with other people. But even in that kind of case, don't share that too much. I'm thinking of another example. I've been watching a web show called Critical Role recently, a bunch of voice actors getting together to play Dungeons and Dragons on a weekly basis, and I'm watching episode 7 of that show at the moment, and I think it's up to about episode 35, so I've got a lot of catching up to do because each episode is about 3 hours long. It's tempting to sort of look at them as a thing to emulate, but you have to keep in mind when you think about this lovely show. There's a Q&A, I think, sometime around about episode 4, where I found out that before it was a show for the YouTube channel Geek and Sundry, it was a podcast itself, and before that it was basically a bunch of people getting together to play D&D. So it did go through that cycle of being something purely private for the people who was playing its enjoyment alone, and then it became a podcast, and then it became an online TV show. So that's always something to keep in mind. Sometimes, even if you are doing something that is shared in and of itself, it does need to start off as private before anyone can actually think about, hey, maybe this has value to other people, and then you refine that private thing into a public product and put maybe a little bit more pressure on it because, you know, you're publishing a podcast or you're turning up every week as much as your schedule permits to do this TV show. So it has to start off with that private suckiness just for its own fun sakeness before it can become something that is publishable and is monetizable, etc., etc. Here on in, going to try and keep things a bit more private, share a little bit less, seek attention a little bit less, and just play. And then eventually you will see stuff out of me that is, even if it's not 100% ready, it's good enough. So in the meantime, that's enough waffling from me. Thank you folks again for listening and for watching, and especially in these even-numbered episodes, putting up with my waffle a bit. Is Rob Farker wishing you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy Kwanzaa, a Happy Holidays. Really, those Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, they're the only ones I know of around about this time of the year, so apologies, folks. Also, telling you, as I always do, to stand by your play. You never know just who else might appreciate it.